What is up, everyone? Welcome back to Zendikar Rising Spoilers update. So, basically, trying to go through the entire spoiler list was kind of crazy, and was taking a lot more time than I needed it to. So I decided just to go through the cards that would be showcase cards, mainly because that would really capture all the rares and mythics in the set, and capture some of the notable commons and uncommons that have landfall, since all the showcase cards are cards that have landfall. One thing to note is that on the pathway lands, we only have 6 of them. And so that doesn't really make a complete cycle of 10. But from what I understand, it's been confirmed that in the winter set, I believe it was like Caladime, something along that line, that the other 4 pathway lands will be in that set. So we will have all 10 pathway lands in standard, and we will have all 10 pathway lands available to us for other formats for people that are interested in that, which I do think these lands are pretty good. So having access to all of them will be pretty nice. So we do have a number of showcase cards that had come out. This card, actually, I saw it and I was like, wait, what? Like, the landfall is whenever a land enters under your control, creatures you control get +1/+1. Not just this guy, but creatures you control. I thought that was kind of crazy. Another one of note to me, and I know some people saw it and they thought it was just a worse version of Adventuring Gear, which is Skyclave Pickaxe. On the face, it does look like a worse version of Adventuring Gear, but like I talked about last go around, the fact that when it enters the battlefield, you can attach it to a creature you control, I think that's pretty sweet. And it's giving it a pretty strong ability with the landfall trigger of giving the equipped creature +2/+2 until end of turn, which we've seen be pretty strong when the original Zendikar came out with cards like Step Links and Plated Geopede. So I think this card is actually better than the credit we give it for, because we're comparing it to Adventuring Gear, but Adventuring Gear didn't have this text on it that said that when it enters the battlefield, attach it to a creature you control. And I think these kind of equipment cards in general are gonna be pretty interesting to see how they play out. I think that they're gonna be pretty strong, just because that's not something we're used to. Normally when we have that kind of effect, it really it's normally on enchantment auras, and you get 2 for 1 whenever an enchantment aura enters the battlefield, its target gets killed or removed or whatever, and then you get 2 for 1. This actually leaves the equipment behind. I know to compensate for it, they've made the equip cost a little bit higher, but it is really an interesting mechanic that they're putting into equipment. I believe Embercleave from Throne of Eldraine was similar in that facet, except it had things like flash or whatever. But I'm really interested to see if this kind of equipment sees play and how well it does. Some cards that I might have come out that I have not talked about. We have our Phylath, the World Sculptor. This is an interesting card. It kind of is reminiscent of Avenger of Zendikar, and there's a lot of nostalgia in this set. Not necessarily in the form of actual reprints or even functional reprints, but reprints with similar abilities. So Phylath, when he comes in, you create a bunch of O1 plant tokens for each basic land you control, and then whenever a land enters the battlefield, you get to put 4 1/1 counters on a plant. So it's not like Avengers Zendikar where you get to put a 1/1 counter on all your plants. You just get to put a 1/1 counter on, for 4 1/1 counters on a plant. Within standard, it will be interesting to see how this plays out, but I can imagine this being pretty fun to play with in stuff like Commander, where you can do a red-green landfall deck, and then you have Phylath and Avengers Zendikar. So you play Phylath, create a bunch of plants, and then you play an Avenger to follow it up, make more plants, and then Avenger makes all the plants grow big. So that seems pretty cool. One of the more interesting cards that come out, and actually there's a lot of interesting cards that came out over the last week, especially in the Mythic spot, and I'm going to be going over them today. was Angel of Destiny. So a 5-mana 2/6 with flying and double strike. Pretty good stats to start off with. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you and that player each gain that much life. And that seems really counterintuitive. You're like, whoa, like this card doesn't really do much offensively. It seems more like a defensive card, but it also just hinders my offensive capability if my plan is to attack. But the second line of text, at the beginning of your end step, if you have at least 15 life more than your starting life total, each player Angel of Destiny attack this turn loses the game, which is just like bonkers. So this really fits into like some kind of life gain strategy where you're aiming just to have a high life total, land an Angel of Destiny, attack, and win the game. I kind of want to mess around with this in Commander, make kind of a red-white life gain deck that can win with Angel of Destiny, life gain equipment. Like, just throw out an Angel of Destiny, hit it, suit it up with a Lightning Greaves attack, win the game if I'm at 55 life or more. Like, this card is really cool. Moving on from the Angel, though, we have the Archon of Emeria, which is just another hate bear. A 3-mana 2/3 flyer. Each player can't cast more than one spell each turn. Non-basic lands your opponents control enter the battlefield tap. Just taxing your opponents. So, well, it taxes you to an extent because you're affected by the can't cast more than one spell each turn, but the non-basic land clause only applies to opponents. So it taxes them in terms of their mana source, but taxes everyone in terms of playing spells. The Archpriest of Iona really builds onto the party mechanic and having a full party. Just kind of standard party mechanic. It'll be interesting to see if within the Dungeons and Dragons set they're coming out with next summer, if they're going to add more of the party mechanic in there, because it seems like this mechanic is going to be a build up to the Dungeons and Dragons crossover set that they're going to be releasing in the summer. It doesn't make sense to announce a Dungeons and Dragons set and then in the same announcement that you're making for Zendikar, and then you're also announcing the party mechanic for Zendikar, which, you know, the two would play together really well. So it'll be interesting to see if they carry that party mechanic over, if they add more members to the party, and how they're going to really go about that, or just maybe just prove me wrong. I don't know if I talked about it last time around, but we did get a confirmation that there will be Mythic Spelllands, or Mythic modal dual face cards that are spells and lands. So the first one that was spoiled was Emeria's Call, which is 7 mana to create 2/4/4 white angel warrior creature tokens with flying, and giving your non-angel creatures indestructible until your next turn. So not only do your non-angel creatures have indestructible the turn that you cast this card, it carries through until your next turn. It's pretty crazy. But the flip side is Emeria the Shattered Skyclave, which, as a land, it comes into play tapped unless you bolt yourself, and it just taps for a white. So some of these look really cool, but also kind of underwhelming. I actually think this Emeria's Call is pretty good, though. 8 power for 7 mana plus the indestructible clause for all your creatures. So I really want to see how these play out. They're probably costed because of the fact they can come down early as a land, and then be played as spells later, which is banking on the fact that you're, you know, making land drops. But the other side to all this is that, like, you can't search for them as lands. You have to search for them as, I believe, the front side. This would be the front side, which is a sorcery. So a little bit of weird play there. It'll be cool to see how this all works out. Going on into blue, I know I talked about Tazri and Confounding Conundrum and some of the other cards, but we're going to go right into our inscription cycle. So I know to this point the green and the black would have been spoiled. I believe the blue one just got spoiled today, which is Inscription of Insight, which is a 4-mana sorcery for 3 and a blue sorcery. You can choose one, or it has kicker of 2 blue, and then you can choose one. If it was kicked, you can choose any number instead. So return 2 target creatures to the owner's hand, scry 2, draw 2, and target player creates an XX blue illusion token where X is the number of cards in their hand. Pretty interesting spell. It'll be like, I look at this face value and I just don't see the power there in terms of what I would expect for blue. I think, whenever we see modal cards coming out, we always want for there to be another cryptic command, and nothing ever lives with a cryptic command. But it will be cool to see how this plays out in the new standard moving forward. 8 mana to do all 3 of these things seems pretty cool, but 8 mana is a lot of mana. And any one of these things for 4 mana, like scry 2, draw 2 seems kind of weak, especially when we have cards like I think it was Read the Bones, where it's like scry 2, draw 2, but you lose 2 life. Like, I don't know if I want to play 4 mana for that at sorcery speed, but like creating a creature that's powered up the space number of cards in your hand, if you build around it, seems fine. And bouncing 2 creatures seems really good in like a tempo style deck. So we'll see how this inscription does. And we had another new card from Luthor Spoiled today, which is Maddening Cacophony. For 2 mana, each player mills 8 cards. If the spell was kicked for an additional 3 and a blue, making it 6 mana total for blue, each opponent mills half their library rounded up instead, which is pretty cool. It's like Global Traumatize for 1 more mana, because Traumatize, I believe, only targets 1 player, and it's for 5 mana. This hits all of your opponents for 6 mana, and there are some cards out there that double up on the amount of cards that are milled, so that pairs nicely with this. Mill all your opponents at once. Moving on into black, we have the black rare Spellland. I guess they're like MDFCs, but I don't like that. It seems like too long. It's like calling on spell lands. We have Hagra Mauling, which is an instant. It costs 1 less to cast if an opponent controls no basic lands. So, interesting stipulation there. I don't know if in standard we're going to see many people not playing basic lands, but it's all really going to be up to deck building. But just, unconditional destroy target creature. So if you're able to cast this for 3, this is pretty great. We don't see really many effects like this at instant speed that's unconditional destroy target creature. And being able to do it for 3 would be great. Doing it for 4, that seems to be the par for the course at this point. But, we also get instant speed, which is nice. And then it just turns into or it doesn't turn it can be Hagra Mauling, or it can be Hagra Brood Pit, which is just the land that enters the battlefield tapped. That taps for a black mana. Moving into the black inscription, we have Inscription of Ruin, which is 3 mana for sorcery with a kicker of 2 black. Same kind of wording as all the inscriptions will have, which is choose 1 if it's kicked. You can choose any number, but a target opponent discards 2 cards, which is like Mind Rot. So we have essentially what turns out to be almost probably just a strictly better Mind Rot. Return target creature with converted mana cost 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, which also seems good for 3 mana, like a good rate. And then destroy target creature with converted mana cost 3 or less. These all seem fine. And for 7 mana to be able to do all 3 of these things, I'm not sure if it's worth 7 mana. But it could be. Just like discard. This could be like really good late game, especially with some of the other cards that have been spoiled, which we'll get into a second. Actually, so if your opponent happens to have a Nighthawk Scavenger on the battlefield, being able to destroy it late game with an Inscription of Ruin seems pretty sweet. And if you happen to have a Scourge of the Skyclaves and it's pretty late in the game and life totals are running low, you just go kick an Inscription of Ruin for 7 mana, kill their Nighthawk Scavenger, get back your Scourge of the Skyclaves, which is just going to be, which you hope to be huge if life totals are pretty low. So, just kind of like some scenarios that can happen within this format. We got Tabarax, which I don't think I that talked about it all. But a 3-mana 2/2 flyer that has lifelink as long as it has 5 or more 1 counters, and it gets a 1 counter whenever a non-token creature you control dies. So, kind of a little caveat there, but if the creature was a cleric, you may draw a card. If you do, you lose 1 life. So this like really fits into like the aristocrats theme. And this would probably be just like a great addition to aristocrat style decks, especially in the commander format. But I can see some cleric shenanigans and aristocrat shenanigans happening in standard pretty soon, especially when we still have things like oven. Well, I don't know if we still have oven cat in standard. I'm completely lost on what has been banned and what hasn't been banned, but we'll see what happens. Alright, we're going to be moving into red here. And before we get to like the meaty stuff, we'll get to the Kargan Intimidator, which gives us the cowards can't block warriors. And you know, you can make a creature a coward, you can give it +1/+1 to make it a 4/2. And then give a warrior trample, including itself. So, pretty interesting card, especially like very aggressively cost at 2 mana for a 3/1. But here is another card, another mythic that has been just people. I think I saw people lose their minds when they saw this one, which is the Leyline Tyrant. It's a 4 mana 4/4 flying dragon, and what would Magic be without a dragon? Now, the rest of the text is pretty interesting. You don't lose unspent red mana as steps and phases end. That means you're just keeping on to your mana, just like Omnath Locust of mana, but now we have it in dragon form. And now, the second line, when it dies, you can pay any amount of red. When you do, it deals that much damage to any target. Like, that's just pretty crazy. Like, it dies. If you have untapped mountains or untapped sources of reds, you can spend red mana towards that, and if you have red mana just floating in your pool because you haven't lost any red mana as your steps and phases in, you can just like dome an opponent for a ton, or just like take out their biggest threat, take out a planeswalker or something. This card seems pretty ridiculous, super competitive, and you know I really want to use it in Commander for this kind of red-white combat turns with the Angel of Destiny. So like I almost feel like I'm gonna be building a Zendikar life gain combat deck soon. We have the Magmatic Channeler. As soon as I can find it, I gotta scroll a little bit lower. Just a 2 mana 1/3. As long as there are as long as there are 4 or more instant or sorcery cards in your graveyard, it gets +3/+1. So, like if you have a bunch of instants of sorceries in your yard, you have a 2 mana 4/4, and then you can tap and discard a card and exile the top 2 cards of your library. Then choose one of them and play that. You have the option to play that card that turn. So like this card comes down, it kind of filters your hand, gives you options as to what you can do with its tap ability, and then it just becomes a threat like in the mid game. Like this card seems pretty good. All things considered, and it feels like it'll fit in some of these like Grixis style decks that we've had in Modern before. So pretty nifty card. And then we're getting into what I'm calling like fixed quote unquote scape shift, which is here's Lithoforming, which is X red, sacrifice X lands, draw a card for each land you sacrifice this way, and then you can play X additional lands this turn. And lands you control enter the battlefield, tap that for that turn. Red card draw. It has a pretty chaotic way of doing it. It does give you an opportunity to replace them, and it does enable a bunch of little like life gain craziness. So, like I was talking about, like the red green. Did I say life gain? I meant landfall. I'm talking about the red green landfall deck. You know, you have this plus Philath can enable some pretty crazy things. So, pretty interesting card. We have the new what I'm dubbing, and it was probably already been dubbed, but well, anyway, the next iteration of Goblin Guide, which is the Wayward Guide Beast. It has Guide in the name, and it has the same mana cost, and it has the same power and toughness, and it has one of the same abilities, which is haste. It also has trample stapled onto it, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you return a land you control to its owner's hand. So kind of a different kind of drawback than Goblin Guide, where Goblin Guide tried to give your opponents land advantage through giving them lands. Wayward Guide Beast is giving your opponents land advantage by making you bounce lands back to your hand. In some cases, this could be detrimental. In some cases, it could really help out. Like if you're stuck on 2 lands, but you need to play multiple spells, you attack, or you cast some spells, attack, deal some damage, bounce a land back to your hand, play a land for the turn, and then use that 1 mana for something else. It could also trigger landfall too, which is pretty cool. Like triggering landfall for things like Searing Blaze in older formats seems nice when you aren't necessarily looking to do that. Moving on to the green inscription. We've got the Inscription of Abundance, which is an instant for 1 and a green, and it has a kicker of 2 and a green. And your options are put 2 encounters on target creature. Target player gains X life, where X is the greatest power among creatures they control. Target creature you control fights target creature you don't control. This card is great. Like, instant speed, 2 mana, 3 really good options. Like, putting 2 encounters to can save a creature. It can get in there for extra damage, hitting like lethal and stuff like that. Like, that's just a good option. Like, gaining X life, like just having the ability to like protect yourself against like hyper aggressive strategies, and giving yourself like an extra turn or two, especially if you have like a big creature out or something that can like really help you stabilize. And then like just removal by the fight mechanic. And then to kick this costs 5 mana, and you get all 3 of these things where you get to put 2 encounters on a creature, maybe even your biggest creature, gain a bunch of life, and then fight and take out their best threat. Like, this card's insane. Card is insane. Another card that I think is pretty cool is the Swarm Shambler. And when it enters the battlefield, with X1 encounters on it. And whenever a creature you control becomes a target, or whatever creature you control with a 1/1 counter on it becomes a target of a spell an opponent controls, create a 1/1 green instant creature token. So you're making, it comes with a bunch of 1/1 counters. You can put 1/1 counters on it, and then if your deck is built around 1/1 counters, then like having your opponent's targeted creatures is bad for them, because you're making 1/1 instant tokens. Like, this card seems pretty cool, and it costs 1 mana. Like, God, 1 mana things. One thing I'll go back to that I didn't look at earlier was the other Mythic Spelllands. So we have Seagate Restoration, which costs 7 mana. Draw cards equal to the number of cards in your hand plus 1. You have no maximum hand size for the rest of the game, with the shock land or the bolt land being tapping for a bloom. This card, I'm not a fan of this card, just to be honest. I think like drawing cards based on your hand size is really conditional. So this is like really something you have to build around if you're planning to use it for its 7 mana ability. And not having a hand size, we have a number of effects that do that in various formats. I'm not really sure about this card, honestly. And one card I'm gonna change up in here, I didn't mark it right, is Shatter Skull Smashing, which we will go to right now, which is the red Mythic Spellland, which is X red. It deals X damage divided as you choose among 2 target creatures and your planeswalkers. If X is 6 or more, so meaning if you pay 8 or more mana into this, it deals twice that damage, divided as you choose among them instead. And I'm a fan of this card. Like, just kind of removal.
And being able to just play it as a land early on if I need to play it as land, like, I think this card's pretty cool. I definitely like it more than I like Seagate Restoration, and I think I like Amiria's Call a little bit more than I like Shatter Skull Smashing, but I still think this card is fine. And now that we've done those, I'm going to move on to the green one, which is Turn Timber Symbiosis. So it's another 7 mana. So I believe the white, the red, the white, the blue, and the green all cost 7 mana. The red one was a X spell, so I don't know, maybe the black one will be an X spell, maybe the black one will cost 7, maybe it'll just be completely different, who knows. But Turn Timber Symbiosis. Look at the top 7 cards of your library. You may put a creature card from among them into the battlefield. If that card has a converted mana cost of 3 or less, it enters with 3 additional 1/1 counters on it. Put the rest of them on the bottom of your library in a random order. It's a... I don't know, like, we've seen effects like this with, like, I can't think of the name of the card right now. The 4 mana one that just got reprinted in like the Amonkhet Masters. Like we've seen cards like this at a much lower cost that are better. Like I'm not terribly impressed by this. I guess you can just like put a big creature on the field for 7 mana, or you can put a smaller creature and make it big. Just not sure how much I love this card, especially once again at sorcery speed. But we'll see what happens with it. Maybe just the fact that you can, just play it in a land in any situation makes it good enough. But we'll see how it works out. Moving into our gold cards. Now this is one that I know a lot of people are in love with, and I don't have the showcase, the extended art version of it at the moment. Once I find a good link for it, I'll add it up. But Akiri, the Fearless Voyager. Whenever you attack a player with 1 or more equipped creatures, draw a card. I mean, that's already great. Red-white commander players have been clamoring for more card draw, and this is going to give it to them, especially in a red-white equipment style deck, where you get things like Stoneforge Mystic and Stone Hero Giant and equipment like open the armory, and Steel Shaper's Gift. Just being able to get equipment, attach them, and do things. And then the second ability on Akiri is you can pay a white and unattach an equipment from a creature you control. If you do, tap that creature and it gains indestructible until end of turn. So just like giving your creatures indestructible, protecting your guys that hold the equipment for you. So I know a lot of people are in love with this card. So bravo. We are almost at the end. I like this next card particularly. It's another one of these hate bears, which is the Ascharon, Implacable Earth. When it enters the battlefield, you can search your library for a basic forest and a basic plains card. Reveal those cards and put them into your hand and shuffle your library. So always love grabbing lands whenever I have the opportunity to. And players can't pay life or sacrifice non-land permanents to cast spells or activate abilities. This is like another one of those hate bear cards. It really messes up fetch lands. Like the fact that you have to pay life in order to activate them. And then it stops cards like Force of Will. So pretty cool card. Nice little card that slots very well into the green-white hate bear style deck, or we can call it hate boar. Got Zagras, Thief of Heartbeats. I have a friend that probably is in love with this card. I haven't talked to him in a while, but he really loved Falkenroth Aristocrat, and this reminds me a lot of Falkenroth Aristocrat. Costs 1 less to cast for each creature in your party, so trying to get that casting cost down a little bit would help. But Flying Death Touch Haste, so just evasion, punishment, and immediate impact. Other creatures you control have Death Touch, and whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a planeswalker, destroy that planeswalker. You know, just solid abilities. I really want to see what kind of decks come out with the party mechanic and how they work out. We have a couple of cards. I believe there was a common or uncommon artifact creature that was spoiled that counts as each member of a party. So we do have some party enabling cards within this set. Moving on into our artifacts, we have our first artifact, which I don't know, I haven't marked it or anything yet because I'm not sure what actual number in the set it could be. I mean, it can fit in 373 or 374 at this point, but it's Forsaken Monument. It's a 5-mana artifact. Colorless creatures you control get +2/+2. Whenever you tap a permanent for colorless, add an additional colorless, and whenever you cast a colorless spell, you gain 2 life. There's a lot going on with this card. People that play artifact decks are going to love this because their colorless artifact creatures are going to get bigger. People that play Eldrazi are going to love this because their colorless Eldrazi are going to get bigger. This card has a lot of combo potential because whenever you tap a permanent for colorless, add an additional colorless. Like this combos with Basalt Monolith right away. It gives you infinite colorless mana with Basalt Monolith. So, card, I mean, just slots into a bunch of colorless and artifact decks. And then whenever you cast a color spell, you gain 2 life. So you get life gain from colorless as well. Just a pretty awesome card. Maybe not so much in the current standard environment, but probably going to be very sought after by those commander players. We have another card, another artifact that I'm particularly excited about. It's Skyclave Relic, and this card, like it's a Dark Steel Ingot with kicker. So it's a 3-mana indestructible artifact that you can tap to add 1 mana of any color. If you pay the kicker of 3, though, when it enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, create 2 tap tokens that are a copy of Skyclave Relic. So you can get, for 6 mana, you can get 3 Skyclave Relics, which seems like pretty awesome. Maybe it's like less of a rate than Gilded Lotus because Gilded Lotus is 5 mana for 3 mana. But like Skyclave Relic allows you to pay, get 3 different kinds of mana versus Gilded Lotus only gives you 1 color of mana. So I'm really excited about this card. I think this card's cool. And the last card we're going to be talking about today is Lithoform Engine, which I kind of skipped over in the alphabet. But, Riku decks that copy, just, they wanted another card, I guess, and they get Lithoform Engine, which is a legendary artifact. You can pay 2 and tap it, copy target activated or triggered ability you control. You may choose new targets for the copies. So, like Planeswalker abilities, creature abilities, just whatever ability, activated or triggered ability you want, you can copy it with Lithoform Engine. You can pay 3 and tap it, and copy target instant or sorcery spell you control, and choose new targets for the copy. So, pretty self-explanatory. The third ability is pretty nuts, I think. 4 and tap it, you can copy target permanent spell you control. So you put a permanent spell on the stack, you copy it, you get 2 of them. Or I guess if you kick a Skyclave Relic, then you can pay 4 and tap it and get 6 Skyclave Relics for 10 mana. But, this card is also probably going to get a lot of demand from the commander players, especially for the decks that like to copy. But, that's it for today. I know I went over a lot, and this video is probably going to be really long. I think I'm sitting at about 33 minutes right now. So, if you got through it, I appreciate you getting through to the end. I don't have any rewards for anyone that made it through the end, just a big old thank you. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. I really appreciate it. And if you're watching and you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button. It'll really help me out, and share with your friends and let them know. Get them to watch and subscribe too. It would be fantastic. I like hearing what you all have to say, and are there any cards that you're interested for in Zendikar Rising? Let me know in the comment section below. And until next time, I hope you all take care, stay safe out there, and goodbye.